it is fundamentally flawed.
My Lords, I really welcome the contributions of Lord Sickert and Lord Moylan in terms of their amendments, because I think this issue of money is important and it's a good way of getting the discussion going, or not just to discuss for the sake of it. What I can't get my head around is how in any way you can legislate in relation to this. I just can't see a way of doing it, even though I think I've got my name on one of the amendments. I think that I know, but I think it's important to discuss this. It's just that listening to Lord Sickert, who I thought made a very strong case for, the problem of corporate funding of research if it distorts outcomes. Nobody wants that, but I don't necessarily know that I don't want any corporate funding of research, and so it's how you deal with it. It's also the case that these days some of the big players in terms of fundings are charities or NGOs. And we mentioned the Wellcome Trust, and the Wellcome Trust, that I worked with for many years. But it is true that the Wellcome Trust would often say our priorities this year are these priorities. And you knew if you wanted a Wellcome Trust grant, you had to fit your research into those priorities. That did have a distorting impact, by the way, I'm not suggesting it was corrupt in any way, but you knew that was the way you were going to get the money. And I certainly know people who shifted their focus in order to get the grants. I also wonder whether, and this is something that I think is important in terms of academic freedom, that there has been a tendency, because of the popularity of politicians saying the evidence shows, and evidence-based policy being fashionable, that does incentivise a kind of politicised research outcomes. There is a kind of sense in which a lot of academics have wanted to be in on the policy discussion, often with outcomes predetermined. I was once, when you go to those things where I said to the minister, where's the evidence for that? And they said, we've commissioned the evidence. But they were announcing the policy. Now, don't tell me that hasn't happened before, because it happens all the time, right? And they'd commission the evidence from a university, in fact. And so I'm just drawing what they're saying. Actually, the reason why I think this is important, though, is I do think that research is completely separate from that, is a place where academic freedom is under the surface, genuinely under threat, but I don't know that the law can change it. I know that I know of two people who put in for research, on detransitioning to raise that issue, and they were just told there was not a cat's in hell's chance of getting any funding for it because it was going to be too controversial. And I think that there are, whether we like it or not, a kind of the broad problems around some of the other issues in terms of what you can and can't look at is affecting what is funded in terms of research, particularly postgrad research. And there's a lot of complaints when you meet postgraduates about that. It doesn't mean to say, by the way, that I don't appreciate what Lord Stevens said, because it's also the case that people can forevermore moan that they're not getting their research funded and it's actually no good, and that actually you do want academic judgment. I'm just pointing out that politics enters in. But one thing I'm really concerned about was when the UKRI, which after all, distributes billions of pounds of research money, produced a draft equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, my favourite topic, earlier in the year, in January, which is a catechism of management speak and write on political outlooks. You could write it, you know exactly what it's going to say and what it's going to do. It's perfectly, a lot of it's about its staff, and that's fine. No objection to that. But I do worry about when it then starts saying, and it starts basically to express its political aims, and you have to question its impartiality when you think that, as far as I'm concerned, in the sciences, it should be given to the best science that advances knowledge, in humanities, research which is likely to give us interesting insights and so on. But actually, it demands of people who apply for it that they actually deliver on these diversity and equality outcomes. And a lot of people that read it were immediately, well, how do I prove that? So it's a layer of work that you have to do that you don't need to do. But actually, if you read the document, sounds quite threatening. If you don't tell us when you apply for this that you're going to deliver on these things, you won't get it. So great science, is sidelined in the name of equality, diversity and inclusion. I think it's something we have to watch, whether the bill can do anything. I'm hoping that the bill will create a climate of discussion about the importance of academic freedom that will counter some of these trends and some of the secret censorship that goes on behind the scenes.
Like